Right now, Vice President Kamala Harris is in Vietnam, pushing ahead on a short trip to Asia. This after her flight from Singapore to Vietnam was delayed yesterday, following a report of a possible incident of what's known as Havana syndrome at the U.S. Embassy in Hanoi. The mysterious illness first emerged in Cuba. In 2016, U.S. officials reported an increase in the number of suspected cases earlier this year. They're alarming. Victims report dizziness, nausea, headaches, head pressure. Some have been diagnosed with traumatic brain injuries. It's serious. It seems to be expanding.
And the worst thing is, of course, they can do it through satellites, and there's nothing you can do to sort of protect yourself against satellites, right? How could we do that? In no way a normal person or a group of persons. But electromagnetic fields go around the world, the planet, and every single nation, every single country. That is the big threat. I think that's the biggest threat right now. And people have no idea, because people die of cancer, which increases, people die of Alzheimer's, which increases, and they don't even realize that the real reason for the extreme increase are electromagnetic fields, done deliberately also to cause diseases, so-called normal, diminish the world population. And the elite, if I can use that word, which steers the world, and it's not the governments. Governments are errand boys for the elite. So the elite says that, our planet is overpopulated and it needs reduction of the population dramatically, even by about 5 billion, when we are 6.9 billion today. So that, in my mind, is not true. The truth, in my mind, is that they are extremely afraid of the middle classes, which are increasing in numbers. And the middle class is a threat to the elite, not the working class. They call them, well, all of us, they call them cattle. We normal people are cattle for them. And the working class would not start a revolution, but the middle class could. And that's why they need to diminish as much as possible. And it's done, so that people don't realize.
Dr. Kilde, we are so privileged to have you on today, because you and I had spoken on the phone a couple of times and you share your story with me. You obviously have a mission, and you will not die until that mission is complete. Now, a lot of people may think that we're fear-mongering. And folks, we're talking to a distinguished former chief medical officer of Finland. This is somebody who has researched this information, and sometimes in the United States you don't get the news if you turn on your TV. You have to step outside.
The overall effect of this technology is one that can control the mood, the attitudes, the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, and thus the motivations and then the actions of the target. All day, every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
And of course, and no pun intended, but Big Pharma wants a big financial shot in the arm. They're behind this, I presume.
Absolutely. It's a billion dollar business, of course.
Now, espionage and assassinations against your will are the two primordial purposes of mind control. Do you think presidential assassination, let's say President John F. Kennedy, his brother, the Pope, President Reagan, to name a few, were these assassins victims of mind control?
I would think so. At least Sirhan was, I've read a lot of papers about him and his programming.
Yes.
And it was interesting that he said after he had fired, he said, "Did I do it?"
Didn't remember.
So it was clear to me after reading what had happened that he was totally mind controlled. And then when he was also killed, not to be able to talk. So, that shows something.
That usually happens.
It's very sad. It's the same thing that happens with the school shootings and the big store shootings, when a young man usually just starts killing everybody who happens to be around, and then kills himself. Now, in my mind, they are all mind control victims, those who shoot. And of course, their victims are also victims. And they always pick out young men who maybe have psychological problems before, and then they start beaming the frequency of hate. And when the frequency of hate is beamed at you for months or a couple of years even, there's nothing you can resist. You have to be a robot and you have to kill. And when you kill yourself, then they can't, ask questions about you. That's the Delta programming in the whole thing. It's very sad. It's very sad.
And we need to turn their psyop around. Speaking of the shooters, because this is something that I've been wanting to ask you, as far as the school shootings that we see and all of these shootings, it's always the same script. A crazy person or kid goes and shoots up a bunch of random innocent people. It usually ends up that the FBI finds a manifesto of them being angry or upset or whatnot. In your opinion, or your experience as an intelligence officer, would you say that most of these shootings, the shooter actually is just a CIA crisis actor, or somebody that's a patsy that they drugged up or something and sent off to go shooting, like they gave them commands or programming? But they're not actually organic, random people that decided to go crazy one day and just shoot up random people. That's my theory.
Well, that's a great question, and I'd say it's kind of the latter, but it's a little more complicated than that. And again, as a federal firearms instructor who has taught tens of thousands from every branch of the military, well published in SWAT, I've done a lot of active shooter or active killer training. And if you go back to Uvalde, some of the core police officers there were in on it. Some of them weren't, that influenced the others. But with Ramos, the dress-wearing demoniac, everybody saw the film of where he's walking into the school building, but I showed a couple seconds before where there were two guys standing there watching him walk into the building. And right a half hour before, a small army plane flew in. So I think that MK Ultra was tested on Ted Kaczynski when he was a very young guy going to Harvard. And of course, he was being the professor that was psychologically torturing him, was sponsored by the CIA. But now MK Ultra is across the country. And that's one of the things that goes with the bioweapon and the boosters and the 5G and the dues. Remember, an hour before the shooting, somebody who was playing a violent video game with Ramos called the FBI, but of course the FBI did nothing. And we've never heard how did he get these two expensive Daniel Defense rifles are high-end rifles. They're expensive. They're kind of like the Rolexes of the AR-15 platforms. He had a really expensive truck.
Right.
Why don't we ever hear where that stuff came from? Well, because it's coming from the FBI, CIA, Praetorian Guard, deep state. But it's not really a crisis actor. It is someone that has been psychologically tortured, manipulated through pharma, cultivated lots of times from a very young age, and then placed around with other guiding influences, case officers around them. It's a little more complicated than that. That's how I see it. But I very clearly say that the deep state is doing this. Yes.
It's very sad. It's very sad.
I want to speak of Project Delta in a few minutes, but I wanted to ask you, mind control is used to manipulate the opinions of individuals, but can it also be accomplished in a mass scale? And if so, how?
Oh, yeah, of course. It's just a frequency that they send. Now, in the last, I would say around 20 years, at least in Europe, I don't know in the States so much, but at least in Europe, they have changed the street lamps all over. They have changed them in old people's homes, at the yards. They have changed them at schoolyards. They have changed them at daycare centers for children, and they are able to send steer from remotely different frequencies. And if people would just look at the lamps, they would start thinking, why do they look different? And they are different than before. So they send a different frequency, and all those people who are around that area are affected. And the worst thing is, of course, they can do it through satellites, and there's nothing you can do to sort of protect yourself against satellites, right? How could we do that? In no
Right.
way a normal person or a group of persons.
I have and will do shows on electronics, chemtrails. We'll do one on HARP, chemicals. But I haven't heard one person put all these together. Chemtrails, HARP, chemicals to produce mind control. How do these work together? This is basically psychological warfare, isn't it?
Of course it is. And we have chemtrails here in Norway very, very often. Chemtrails, of course, are often put into military planes or even passenger planes. I've seen a Lufthansa plane, a picture, which was distributing the white streaks, which is in powder form. They have titanium, aluminium, magnesium, etc. in this powder form. And since it's metal originally in powder, we breathe it in, and that way we can also be microchipped.
Oh, you're talking about chemtrails.
Chemtrails, yeah.
Yes.
Chemtrails from the skies.
Operation
And of course,
Cloverleaf.
when you're microchipped, then you are mind controlled.
Right.
So chemical trails can be adding to the mind control of the general population without their knowledge at all. And then that's one of the reasons why diseases like bronchitis, asthma, etc. have really increased, because you breathe it in. And people have no idea. Sometimes they look, oh, aren't they nice figures there, a figure X or something. And when I asked an expert, why are they always often in an X form, which they put the white strips in? So the answer was that so we can, through satellite pictures, see which areas are contaminated. So there's really a plan there.
Last week we had a show on chemtrails. We had somebody who really got into the what, who, when, etc. of the chemtrails. And I mentioned to him that a lot of people these days, you can find them in a comatose, an indifferent way. When they're driving, they feel that their mind is foggy, not as before. A lot of multiple sclerosis, a lot of Alzheimer's, dementia, and aluminum causes all that, right?
Yeah, right. Correct. It's done deliberately to destroy the population of the world, to get more money for Big Pharma, because when you're sick, of course, you need medicines and you need doctors, and so Big Pharma gets the money.
Right.
And then, of course, when it gets bad enough, you die. So the whole plan is to diminish the population with chemical means like chemtrails, with electronic means, electromagnetic weapons, non-lethal weapons, and then psychological warfare, which causes stress and ill feelings to people, so that they get stressed and then they get tired and maybe commit suicide or whatever. It's a plan of the devil's, I think, and people don't know about it. They just suffer and die, and they should know about it.
As Henry Kissinger says, we're just simply useless eaters or useless containers.
Exactly. Yeah, we're cattle.
The powers that be sometimes don't lie about the fact they are using mind control during conflict areas, wars, and call it non-lethal weapons. But are they really non-lethal?
No, they're lethal. But they can be used as non-lethal. Tasers like that, when they can shoot at you, and or pepper sprays and things like that, and you stop your attack, or there's a crowd dispersing or something like that. But then if you put the hard frequency on, then of course they're lethal. I think the worst is if you don't know that you're microchipped, and then you are steered. If you do know, then at least you can try to resist. Always when you get a thought, hey, I'll go there or do something, so stop. Hey, is it my thought or induced?
Right.
But if you don't know that you're microchipped, and that can happen with a handshake today, because it's only 2 micromillimeters when hair diameter is 50. So once you get it into your body, that's it for life. It stays there, and you're steered. And there's nothing you can do. You can't even operate it out anymore, because in the 60s and 70s, they were size of rice of grain, a little thing, maybe one centimeter. But now, since they're 2 micromillimeter, so you can never get it out.
It's nanotechnology.
Exactly. That's what it is. And to prove that you have it, if you want to, you can take an MRI, X-ray, and that gives a signal. It gives a signal. I know a Swedish man who was implanted by the police when he was arrested for something. He was implanted in the prison, And his head, when you have a device that can get the signal, his head really squeaks. And then he had this implant removed, but it was sent to the New York and, of course, disappeared. Nowadays, you can't remove them anymore because they're so small.
So let's say that you go and have an MRI, and this is nanotechnology. First of all, would it detect it? And second, if they do, if it's so small, how would they even remove it? It could be attached to any part of your body, right?
Yeah, they cannot move it anymore. It's only that they can give a signal which shows that they have it. But they can't take it away, and it's too small, and it can just, in an X-ray, look like a little dot.
Right.
You can't remove it. But it gives this squeaking signal. So that's proof that, hey, you have something there.
So for somebody who was involuntarily microchip with a, let's call it nanotechnology microchip, is there a way to deactivate it, or do they have to live with it forever? I
think you have to live forever, because maybe military has some tools, but the civilians don't. Like,
of course.
Like I said, academic research is 50 years behind. But usually when military develops a weapon, and this is a weapon, according to the British Medical Journal, already it was in July, 12th of July 1997, there was an article where they warned doctors not to go along with the weapon industry, which meant microchipping of patients. So those who work for the military and have developed this, of course, they also always try to counteract. So they may have their possibilities of diminishing the effects, but civilian academic population, no, and research, no, not today.
A quick detour to stop at the swine flu again. Do you think is this a possibility that if what they're trying to do is to use compulsory vaccinations on the population, do you believe this could be also because they want to microchip and use and leverage that opportunity to do it now, since they have the opportunity and creating a false pandemic?
Yes, I agree. I have thought about that from the first moment, because that would be a perfect way of microchipping, putting a little microchip into the vaccine. Now, they will, of course, not reveal it, but
exactly.
That's what the U.S. Military was doing already in Vietnam War. And first Iraqi war, they microchipped with vaccinations all their soldiers. And like Timothy McVeigh, who was then accused with the murder of Oklahoma bombings, etc.,
yes,
mentioned that he was microchipped with the vaccine in his buttocks.
Exactly.
So, and then, of course, FBI, who probably was behind the whole thing, well, just washed their hands. And then they always take somebody who is a victim, who is going to be the person whom they accuse of being the criminal. That's just the way they always operate. And like if you think of September 11th,
yes,
well, the same thing happened in London. When they had the metro explosion, they used the same scheme. In September 11th, I read that Dick Cheney was conducting a military exercise, and in the military exercise, at the same time that the real plane, if there was a plane or if it was just
remote controlled
screen, something anyway. So people didn't know if this was an exercise or was it a real thing. And so same thing was in London Metro. Scotland Yard was putting out an exercise about explosion in the metro, and at the same time there was an explosion in the metro. So they always use it, like Pearl Harbor, the same kind of like some scheme. Since it works, they use it for years and years and years and years. And I think most people now already know that September 11th was an inside job, and even an ex-Italian president mentioned that it was CIA and Mossad who was behind it. That's pretty much said of a president of another country.
About standing waves and resonance, it is very important to know for our mind control research to get rid of it. What resonance needs, it needs the same type of waves, also longitudinal scalar waves, in the same frequency and amplitude, but 100 degrees in a phase difference, and then you build up a resonance with a standing wave. And this they do when they do mind control. So there we know the theories about it, that two waves going so and meeting, or you can have one so and from the opposite side go against. It is also possible to structure something and manifest things with that. And they call it phased array. There's one radar in the world which have three phases. Also usually the radar has two, but there's one that has three, and this is very close to Whitby where Simon Parkes lives. I have looked on it. He was invited to it. It's driven by the NSA. It's an over-the-horizon radar. And the other things, when they come together, is phase conjugation. Scalar waves can build up a standing resonance, a resonance circuit between the target and the perpetrator. Often it is Mossad controlling in the Western world the mind control technology.
Today, anybody, just anybody and everybody can be a target. Especially, already from 70s, they stated that they need and want politicians as targets, because when you control politicians, you control a lot of things. And today it is the highest politicians and generals and admirals that are the targets to be microchipped, to be in total control. And therefore, they who do this, they have the control. So when we think that presidents or prime ministers lead a nation, that's totally wrong. Totally wrong. Because they want control of everything. And I was at a conference in 2009 in Germany, Ettlinger, where an American, very known officer on this field, Colonel Alexander, John Alexander, had a lecture, and he explained who are they. Who are they? He made, kind of with his fingers into the air a square and said, in the middle there is the sign of New World Order. Then on the other side there is the Star of David. And then on the other side are the signs for CIA, FBI, and British intelligence. And he said they are them who are doing this to the world.
We don't have to wait until Christ's second coming in order to overcome death. A couple of geeks in a laboratory can do it, if you give them enough time and money.
You have a lovely passage where you say, looking at the world today, God seems to be making a comeback, but this is a mirage. God is dead. It just takes a while to get rid of the body.
I don't think life has any meaning. So in that sense, it's not a strong counter argument. I know that many religions and philosophies have based the meaning of life on death and what happens after death, but I think these are all fictional stories that people have invented through history. They are not the truth, because throughout history, death was kind of the great equalizer. I mean, the poor people always told themselves, say in the Middle Ages, yes, now these rich people, they have all the good things in life, but they will die in the end, at least that. Just think what it means to be a poor person in a world when you die, but the rich continue to live young and beautiful forever. I mean, it's a cause for a lot of anger. If you think about the Bible, for example, so in the first book of Genesis, what God does is to create animals and plants and humans, and we now want to gain this ability to ourselves to manufacture animals and plants and humans. And we even go beyond God. I mean, even if you believe in the Bible, the only thing the God of the Bible managed to create is organic beings. He managed to create the cows and the tomatoes and the giraffes and the humans, all organic. Now we try to go beyond the God of the Bible and create inorganic life, something he never managed to do, either according to the Bible or according to biology. For 4 billion years, all of life was organic, and now we want to create inorganic life. That's really, divinity is not far enough to describe what we are trying to do. The soul and the afterlife and things like that, the main task of God was to ensure agricultural production and victory in war. If you read really the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, it's all about agricultural production. It's about rain, it's about pestilence, it's about fertility. And now we are much better than the God of the Bible. I mean, in the Bible you have these recurring droughts, that the people of Israel do something wrong, God's become angry, drought, no water. But now Israel has built in recent years a huge desalinization factory on the shores of the Mediterranean. And most drinking water in Israel today actually come from these plants, from these factories. So we can make God as angry as we like. I mean, he can stop the rains, we don't care. We still have water because science has managed to go way beyond the expectations of the ancient Hebrews. I think the most interesting place today from a religious perspective is Silicon Valley. My bet is this is where the new religions of the 21st century are being created, will be created, and these will be kind of techno-religions, religions based on technology, religions that make all the old promises of Christianity and Judaism and Hinduism and so forth. They will also promise happiness and prosperity and justice and even eternal life, but here on earth with the help of technology.
Kabbalah, the entire thing is separation of people to Israelitic and non-Israelitic according to the book called Jewish Utopia. Now, they are building their own kingdom. It's the Jewish earthly kingdom with headquarters in Jerusalem, where their AI Messiah will be, and they're going to rule the world through the law. You know, it will be international, one law, one religion, basically, Luciferian religion. So yes, in a Talmud, this is the Jewish earthly kingdom, and this is why the Zionist Christianity have embraced Kiliism. They have embraced, or Chiliism, I don't know how you would say.
Kiliism, which means 1,000.
1,000.
Where they get the 1,000-year millennial reign.
Exactly, which is a focus on earthly millennial kingdom. And this is how Jews and Christians are getting together, and Christians are so deceived thinking that they are working for the good thing, for the Jews, like they're helping the Jews. The Jews are supposed to get this kingdom. Yet this is Zoharic doctrine, and it does not have good intention. As I said, that they want to rule the world, they want to get Gentile riches, and they want to rule the Gentiles. They don't consider Gentiles fully human beings, and in fact, as an end game, they have this strange doctrine, Adam Kadmon doctrine, which Adam Kadmon originally was, according to Zohar and Talmud, he was androgynous. You know, Adam, like he wasn't male, or he was male female in one body, and this is why you see this transgender agenda today, and there are laws, very serious laws, passing in Alberta, Canada.
Is Zionism behind the transgender movement?
You know, I don't think that, personally, I don't think Zionist Christians are aware of this. They're not aware of many details of what
But is Zionism?
But I think that, yes.
Does the transgender movement get its origin in Zionism?
Yes, it gets its origin in Zionism, and it gets its origin in the Talmud, Zohar, and Kabbalah. It's a Kabbalistic doctrine of Adam Kadmon, which is eventually they have this doctrine called Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. Yes. So how do they want to repair the world? They want to bring it to the original. Who was original Adam? He was androgynous. So now they're putting specific things in food and drink, and they're basically their end game is to make humans that on Earth that will survive whatever it is they're bringing, androgynous,
The-
transgender agenda.
What they're really trying to do is undo God's creation.
Exactly.
With the help of true friends like President Joe Biden, we will stay loyal to Israel's founding ideals: democracy at home and peace abroad.